Hello, I'm Olivia of Atiliay, and I'm a brush letter and artist. I'd like to thank LA County Library for inviting me to teach you how to create Crayola calligraphy. It's a fun and easy art form that can be used for a variety of projects, so I'm very excited to share it with you. I hope you enjoy the lesson. Let's get started and learn Crayola calligraphy. So the defining characteristics of calligraphy are these thick and thin lines. So with Crayola calligraphy, we're going to be using a Crayola marker to get that look. I like to think about learning this as two different parts. First, we're going to be learning how to use a marker to create the thick and thin lines, and then we're going to learn how to create the shapes of the letters. Let's talk about how to hold our Crayola marker. So we're going to be utilizing both the tip and the side of the marker. So we never want to hold it straight up and down because if you do that, you're not going to be able to utilize that side. So what I like to do is hold it at a slight angle, and every person is going to be different. So see what works for you and where you want to hold your pen. But my suggestion is to have this side of your hand, whether you're left or right-handed, flat on the table because that kind of just creates that slant shape. And it also helps to anchor you to keep the lines from being so shaky. And so we want to be able to use the tip and the sides because we want to create thick and thin lines. So by using the tip, we can create thin lines. So all you have to remember is to write regularly without any extra pressure, and that anytime you're going in an upwards direction, those are going to be your thin strokes. And then anytime you're going in a downwards direction, that's when we're going to be utilizing the side of the marker to get those thick strokes. So I'm holding it at an angle so I can reach the side, and then I'm putting more pressure on it so I can get that nice thick line. So when you're going down, it's going to be thick. So, usually when we write super, super fast. So I just want to remind you that, to slow down. It's okay. You can go slower is better when it comes to this because then we can focus on getting the right thicknesses for the lines and keeping them consistent. So just to recap, we want to make sure that our pen is held at sort of a slant. And if you do need to adjust your pen while you're making the thick and thin lines, that's okay. I normally don't move it a lot. It's just more about the pressure, but do what works for you and what feels best for you. So again, you just don't want to hold it straight up and down because you're not going to be able to reach that side. And then the other rules are that anytime you're going in an upwards direction, it's going to be a thin upstroke. Anytime you're going down, it's going to be a thick downstroke. So I like to think you're like pushing down or putting more pressure on it. So these are basically two of the basic strokes. And so for this next part, I wanted to go over all of the basic strokes with you. You can follow along on a blank piece of paper, or you can print out the sheet from the link listed on your worksheet. And so this is a basic strokes practice worksheet. So there's the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes. So the gray are for you to trace, and then the white area is for you to do some on your own. So I just filled some in since we already did them. So we're going to go to the next part, which is connecting the thick and the thin strokes. So if we were to regularly write this with a pen, if I told you to make this shape, most of the time we would probably go like this, right? Like it would be one continuous stroke. But the one thing about calligraphy is we really want to separate out all the shapes and focus on each of the strokes. So what I mean by that is we're going to be doing the entry stroke and then creating each of these kind of L curved shapes, then putting the next shape beside each other. So there's a lot of lifting up our pens. It's not going to be continuous. So throw everything that you know about cursive out the window. It's pretty different. So for this shape, we're just going to start with this little entry stroke. And sometimes these are here just for kind of decoration and it makes it look cute, or it evens out the shape. So it's a thin upstroke. And then I'm going to go to the top of this shape, and this is where we're going to press down and use the side of our pen to get that thick downstroke. And so before I get to the bottom, I start kind of releasing the pressure. So my pen is still going to be on the paper, but I'm just not pushing down as hard. So I do that like about here so that I start lifting up already. So when I go there, I start lifting up so that when I go around to the curve, it can be a thin upstroke. And that's our first shape. And then our second shape is going to be the same thing. And we're basically just creating these shapes and putting them beside each other. So keep that in mind because that's how letters and words are going to be formed as well. It's not going to be a continuous stroke. So let's do another one so you can see what that looks like. And again, before you get to the bottom, start kind of releasing the pressure so that you can get a thin stroke. And what I like doing is I usually go through all of the strokes, and then at the end, if there's anything you want to touch up, you can do that. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. So let's do one without the guideline so you can see what that looks like. So we're going to do the up stroke is thin, then we're going to go down is thick, release the pressure at the curve, and then go up, it's going to be a thin line. And then we're just going to make the next shape, and then just putting it beside each one. So I know sometimes in the first, times that you're doing this, it might be a little bit hard to gauge where the lines and things are going to go, but that just comes with practice. And so I do recommend printing out these tracing sheets. It does make it a little bit easier to follow along when you first get started. Then this next shape is more of a continuous line, but I still will break it up just because, if you try to do a bunch of these, your hand is going to feel weird. You're going to run out of space. So there is going to, be points where you're going to have to pick up your pen. So again, it's the same thing where the thick downstroke is going to be going down and you're using the side of the pen. And then for this, I do extend out the line a little bit. So what I mean is like I'll do this thick stroke and then extend it a little bit before I go up, and then I'll extend it a little bit before I go down. And this helps to get a nice curve shape. Otherwise, if you go straight up and down, it's gonna become a V shape. So unless you want that, it's nice to just extend it to get a nice curve. So sometimes on a continuous shape like this, I can do a couple of these curves, and then I kind of feel like my hand is starting to get a little bit cramped and that there's not enough room. I kind of have to stop to readjust my hand and paper. So when that happens, I try to end it on a thick stroke, and then I'll go back to the top of the last thick stroke to continue my line there, just because I feel like when you try to connect it at the bottom, sometimes it just gets a little bit messy and it's hard to get it kind of clean looking. So I'll go and do the downstroke again, and then continue on and finish the shape out that way. Then the next shape that we had is this loop. So for the loop, it's going to be similar to what we mentioned above, where each shape is going to be a separate shape, and then you're just putting them beside each other instead of doing one whole continuous line. We're going to start here at this entry stroke, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way up to the top here. So that's going to be our upstroke, and then at the top you can either pause or you can pick up your pen completely and then get ready to do that downstroke by pushing down and adding more pressure. And then again at the curve at the bottom, start releasing the pressure so you get that up thin stroke. And then we're going to lift up, and then we're going to start again and do the next loop. So you're just creating the shape and putting it beside each other. Now I'll do one here without the outline so you can see. So we're going to do this upstroke at the front, then at the top pause, and then slow down so you can push down to get that thick downstroke, and that's your first curve, loop. And then I'm just going to make another loop, and you're just basically putting it beside each other. And those are some of your basic strokes to get you started and warmed up before we start connecting everything together to create letters. Creating letters is the same concept as what we just went over. We're just putting the lines together to create the shapes that we recognize as letters. So again, go slowly and just concentrate on the thin and thick strokes, and I will go ahead and do a demo of this alphabet worksheet. that we've practiced the alphabet and letters, let's put these together to create words. So it's very similar to what we talked about when we were doing the basic strokes, where we're going to be putting each letter beside each other so they create words. So I'll do a couple of examples and then give you some tips as well. So the first word I'm going to write is hello. So I'm going to start with the H, and you can always reference your alphabet sheet so you know what the shape of the letter should look like. So I'm going to start with the H. And then when I make the exit stroke, which is this last stroke here, I just want to make sure that it's long enough and wide enough so that I can add another letter beside it and it won't look too squished. So, if this line was down here or if it was really close to this part of the letter, then, that's where the next letter would go and it wouldn't look right. So you just want to make sure that you extend that exit stroke out a little bit so that there's room for the next letter. And then the L's are like the loops that we practiced. So in the beginning, it is going to take some time to kind of gauge how long your exit strokes are going to be and how wide to make them, but it all comes with practice. I just try to make sure that the widths are all about the same. It doesn't have to be exact, but the more consistent they are, the more neater your word is going to look. So let's do another one. Let's try the word right. So with right, you can have your W be without that little entry stroke there, or you can add it in. Sometimes it's nice to have a little kind of start. Now for the W and the R, it's a little bit tricky because the exit stroke that I'm going to make for the W is going to be the first stroke of the R. So I'm going to letter R, and then again extending that exit stroke, connecting the I, T, and the E. And you can dot your I, and then the T crosses are really fun. So you'll basically go ahead and practice, and that's how you're really going to know how to connect letters together. Every word is going to be different depending on which letter is beside it. So that can be kind of tricky sometimes. So I wanted to give you a resource. It's called dafont.com. And it's a website, and it has a bunch of calligraphy fonts on it. And they also have a little preview box. So when you go on the site, you hit the section that has all the calligraphy fonts. Then in the little preview box, enter the word that you want to see connected. So let's say it's something like zebra. So once you type in zebra and press enter, this website will pull it up in all the calligraphy fonts that are available. So that really helps you see how do the letters connect, if there's something tricky. But it does take just a lot of practice and trial and error. It also really helps to trace in the beginning just to get an idea of how things connect and what it feels like. So you can use the sheets that we've included. So they have some typical sayings so that we can make things with them. So there's happy birthday and happy holidays in English and in Spanish. And so these are a little bit of a gray color just so that you can trace them with your Crayola. And this is a good way to practice. And if you go on the website listed on the worksheet, you can also download more practice sheets. So these just have happy birthday on them, they just have happy holidays, and they have them repeated a couple times so that you can use them for practice. And just remember that practice makes progress. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Everyone starts off that way and you'll get there. On all the words that I lettered here, you can tell that they're all basically on one line. So everything is even. I wanted to talk to you about a concept called bounce. So when you're bouncing letters, that means there's variation between these letters, so they don't all fall on a line like this. So I'm going to take the example hello, and I'm going to letter it in bounce so that you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to start with the H. And then I just dipped this a little bit lower than I normally would while keeping the E a little bit higher. Then I like kind of varying the sizes when there's double letters like that, and also making this one a little bit lower so it matches this H. And then I'm going to finish out with the O, which is sort of the same at the same level as the E. But by adding bounce, you just create more movement. And this is totally a style thing. Some people like everything all on one level. Some people like it when it looks like this with a little bit more variation and movement. And it's really up to you. It is a little bit of a more advanced concept just because you kind of want to get used to lettering all the letters and words first, and then maybe playing around with pulling some of these letters down to make them a little bit lower. There aren't any hard or fast rules for bouncing, but one thing I did want to mention is you'll kind of start seeing a pattern. So letters that sort of are like this H that has this exit stroke here, you can stretch it out or pull it down a little bit, versus if you take something like the letter E and you stretch it out, it's just going to look like an elongated E, if that makes sense. So if you go back and look at the alphabet, you can start to see some of these patterns. So like I was mentioning with the H here, this capital A has the same thing where you can basically lower this and it would still look like the letter A and just give it a little bit more movement. You could also do it with this K and also with the N and the R. But for something like the S, if you elongate it, it's just going to look like a long S. So it's something that you can play with, and if you like this style of lettering, it's definitely something that you can try and start incorporating. I'll do one more example. So let's take the right and also add some bounce to that. And it's also not about bouncing or adding kind of movement to every single letter, then it's going to look a little bit wonky and kind of uneven. So the other tip that I like to share is that there's still sort of a baseline. So for example, the W, I, and the E, they're all on the same level. And then these two that are elongated, the R and the T, they're on the same level. And I also don't do every single letter. And it's not always every other one, but since this word has 5 letters, it does kind of work out because it looks symmetrical still. So that's something that you can play with. And again, if you go on to font.com, some of the fonts do have bounce incorporated in them. So that can help give you an idea and give you a place to start. And here's an overhead view so that you can see what it looks like. So again, this is without bounce, so it's all in the same level. And these two are with bounce, so you can see there's some variation and a little bit more movement. There's a lot of fun things that you can create with your Crayola calligraphy. So I wanted to share with you a few projects. One of them is making your own greeting cards. So what I suggest doing is practicing one of these phrases until you feel comfortable, and then in pencil on cardstock, write out the phrase that you want to letter. So I did happy birthday here, and I also wanted to show you that the concept of downstrokes are thick and upstrokes are thin works also for regular print. It doesn't have to be calligraphy. So you can make your own fonts that way, and horizontal lines stay thin. So what I like to do is write out everything in pencil first. So when I'm doing this, I'm basically laying out the spacing as well as the shape. So if you can see on the pencil, I'm not really indicating whether it's thick or thin. It's mostly just so I know where to create the shape. And then once I am ready to do it in marker, then I will do the thick and thin lines. So let's just finish out this card here. And then what you would do is let this dry completely. You don't want to smear it like I have in the past. So be patient, let it dry completely, and then you can erase it and then fold it, and then you've made your own card. The other project I wanted to suggest trying is making your own wrapping paper. I think this is super fun and people love it, and you get to personalize it. So what you do is just get one of these craft rolls of paper that are plain from Michael's or some kind of craft store like that, and then you lay it out on your table and then just start lettering happy birthday, oh baby, happy holidays, whatever it is you'd like to say on your wrapping paper. I also wanted to mention that if you look at your wrapping paper or whatever project you're working on and you feel like the thick lines should be a little bit thicker, or you just want them to be a little bit thicker, you can always go back and just color in the thick lines a little bit more. And again, you can always touch up. But the really nice thing about this project, I think, is that it's a great way to practice while making something that you can actually use. And you don't have to be too nitpicky or hard on yourself about it being perfect because it's going to be cut. You're probably going to put ribbon on it. And no matter what, the effect is really cool. And I think people appreciate the extra thought that you went into making it for them. So that's just a few things you can do. You can also make gift tags. There are lots of possibilities. And so just have fun with it. I hope you'll continue to practice and grow your new skill and try some of these fun projects out. Remember to go slowly, practice makes progress, and have fun with it. Don't forget that LA County Library has books on calligraphy and lettering, as well as online resources to help you learn more about this beautiful art form. Thank you so much for joining me for this lesson, and happy lettering!